Let's talk about your organizational chart. Usually when asked to see someone's org chart, they get very excited because people work very hard, very diligently on their org chart. It's a visual representation of the managerial relationships that exist inside the organization. Except when I look at them, I find some very curious things. The most curious of which is the dotted line responsibility. Now what the dotted line responsibility means is you're not really responsible for this key result area over here. You only have a dotted line. But I've got news for you. If the wheels come off, you, my friend, are in the hot seat. Now the other thing that I find curious about most org charts is the dual manager. If you want to make someone schizophrenic, assign them 2 managers. By the way, if you'd like to set someone free, give them 3 managers. No one will be able to hold them accountable for anything. I use organizational charts to begin to talk about managerial relationships based on this principle. Every employee is entitled to have a competent manager with the time span capability to bring value to their problem solving and decision making. I've been teaching management courses in the classroom since 1995. One of the first things that I have to beat out of my students is this. You are not a manager so people can report to you. You are a manager to bring value to the problem solving and decision making of your team members. Easy to say, hard to do. Here's a hint. You do not bring value to a person's problem solving or decision making by telling them what to do. You do bring value to a person's problem solving and decision making by asking them questions. We screw this up all the time structurally. Here's how. As the CEO of my company, I've got 2 team members, Joe and Marissa. Now, Joe and I started the company about 8 years ago. Joe is probably one of the best Stratum 2 supervisors on the planet. Truly knows how to drive production. Now, I've always been Joe's manager because we started the company together. Hasn't really been a problem until recently when we began to grow. Now, about 3 years ago, we were having some system integration issues. We brought in Marissa. Marissa is a system integration specialist, and we kept her on as one of our vice presidents. As the CEO, I've been finding myself getting busier and busier. I've got a lot of stuff on my plate and a lot of stuff that's coming down the pike, and I'm going to pay attention to the stuff that's coming down the pike. I got to get something off my plate. Today, I've decided it's Joe. So I called Joe and Marissa into the conference room. Now, Joe, first of all, I have to apologize for not being able to spend the kind of time to help you with your problem solving and decision making, but I was just wondering if from now on, Marissa could be your new manager. And Marissa, as one of our Stratum 4 vice presidents, I know you have a lot on your plate as well, but from now on, if you could be Joe's new manager, as a personal favor to me, it would help me out a lot. And how do they respond? Of course they agree. You see, as the CEO, not only can I make a mistake, I can approve it. But about 2 weeks later, Joe's in my office going, Foster, I know you wanted Marissa to be my new manager, but I got to tell you, every time we get together, she just talks about these big pie charts and these bar charts and talks about the big picture and what we're all about here. I try to explain, down on the production floor, sometimes we have to reject our raw materials. They're out of spec. And when we reject our raw materials, our productivity goes down. And do you remember that machine that we didn't replace last year, decided to hobble it along for 1 more year? Breaks down a little more often than it used to. And whenever it breaks down, our productivity goes down. I try to explain this stuff to Marissa, and she just keeps talking about these pie charts and bar charts and the big picture. I say, don't worry about it, Joe. I'll take care of this. Go on back out to the floor. You're doing a great job. So who do I call in next? Marissa. Marissa is one of our Stratum 4 vice presidents. You're doing a great job. But I got to tell you, I was just talking to Joe. Marissa stops me cold. She says, don't listen to that Joe guy. That Joe guy just doesn't see the big picture. That Joe guy doesn't know what we're all about here. Bottom line is Marissa bringing value to Joe's problem solving and decision making. What's missing? Now it could actually be any missing layer. Elliot calls this the translator role. Someone to translate Marissa's big picture thinking. After all, that's what we hired her for in the first place. Someone to translate Marissa's big picture thinking into time span appropriate projects that Joe can now go drive on the production floor. What happens here? Actually, this team used to have a manager, but he went fly fishing to Montana and he called in well. He said, well, I ain't coming back. So we lined the team up against the wall and picked the tallest one to be the new manager. Bottom line is this new manager have the time span capability to bring value to the problem solving and decision making of the rest of the team. You see, given a difficult decision to make, he makes decisions the same way they do. Given a difficult problem to solve, he solves problems the same way they do. So this would be the requisite organization, where each person in Stratum 1 has an appropriate manager in Stratum 2, and each person in Stratum 2 has an appropriate manager in Stratum 3, with an appropriate manager in Stratum 4, one stratum separation. Now, what's the root word of requisite? Required. This is not a warm and fuzzy recommendation. This is a requirement. Anything you do different from this introduces dysfunction into the organization. Now, are there times when we have to pull teeth out of our organization? Of course we do, especially during times of recession. But when we have the resources to put the company back together, this is what it needs to look like. But then again, doesn't this look like a hierarchy? And haven't we been told by recent management consultants that hierarchy is bad? Well, actually, Elliot would agree that bad hierarchy is bad, but don't throw out hierarchy because hierarchy is actually necessary. It is a requirement. You see, the problem is we don't understand what hierarchy is for. We think it's a reporting protocol. You are not a manager so people can report to you. You are a manager to bring value to the problem solving and decision making of your team members. The purpose for hierarchy is to create this value stream.